Well, we're at one of the most brilliant racing circuits in all of the world. And when I say racing circuit, I mean close action. I mean overtake after overtake, and I mean dramatic finishes, because Summit Point, let's get some words out. Summit Point Raceway will play host to the third round of the Skip Barber 2K World Cup Series in its 10th season of action. Qualifying is next.
When I sat in the car, you always wonder, what's it going to feel like? You know, it was my first time driving a mid-engine GT car. You know, my thoughts were, wow, this is really good for our first time in a car. I was really surprised by it. You're sitting low, you got the A-pillars at steep angles, the windshields at steep angles, you can see the fender flares. I think we have a chance to win. Everything's got to go right, but I think we have a car that can win the race or be on the podium. But can you imagine how cool that would be to go back 50 years later to the year and do it?
Welcome to the circuit here in West Virginia in the United States of America. Summit Point Raceway is going to play host to a simply fantastic race today here around this 10-turn, 3.19 kilometer circuit. 30 laps today, but 5 minutes and 2 laps of qualifying will get ourselves going today. Streaming live on iRacing Live, brought to you by RaceSpotTV. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's hashtag Do You Mind? Jake Sparey in the commentary booth, joined alongside by Mr. Cameron Walsh. And Cam, two things that need to be brought up with here today. The first, the track is incredibly hot, 44 degrees C. There is going to be a lot of understeer around a very difficult circuit like this one here today. The second thing we have to note, Skip Barber Race Series on Wednesday. Greg Sykes blowing his engine on the final lap. Engines are going to be at the biggest capacity that they've been used at anywhere during the season.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. And yes, with the amount of shifting that these guys will have to do, with how many corners are, how slow these corners can get to, I wouldn't be too surprised if we don't see some engines actually explode, especially with how close this field's going to be, with how tight and how short this actual circuit is.
Yes, and it is a very short circuit, only 80 seconds a lap takes here. But let's look at the championship standings. No drop weeks have been applied so far yet, but there will be at least 4 that they'll be playing with. Sebastian Jobe currently leads the championship by a slender 3 points over Arjen de Freitas, the reigning champion right now, after his recovery drive at Phillip Island. It comes down Greg Sykes third, Brian Duell fourth, Philippe Laibert, Mr. 2K World Cup in position number 5. But there are some brilliant names throughout this field who have been there, or thereabouts here. Let's get some right words out. Cam, be working with Connery earlier today. But Cam, there are names here that are all looking to try and get some brilliant times in. You talk about drivers like Philippe Laibert. You talk about drivers like Arjen de Freitas. You talk about drivers like even, say, Enzo Cantor, Johnny Guindi. You talk about Paul Malocas making his first start of the season in the number 4 positive sim racing machine. And he needs a lap time, and he needs some championship points. He's used most of his drop weeks already.
Yeah, absolutely, and just somehow, you know, life can get into its way like that, or a really bad race can really ruin your chances at the championship, where you have such a narrow band of where you need to perform, and it just amplifies the pressure again and again and again. And that's what we see here in the 2K World Cup Series. The pressure, even regardless of the drop weeks, is always at an all-time high with just how competitive this field is. I mean, 48 cars here today for a track that's slightly shorter than 2 miles. So that always ends up getting wild. Everyone's first qualifying laps coming in now.
Sebastian Joe currently top of the standings for the Corsim Racing team. Lionel Gamay currently P number 2. Paul Malocus in position number 3. Vinicius Rocha 4th. Arian De Freitas 5th. Philippe Lebert in 6th. Tuan Tran in position number 7. Just 5 minutes here in this qualifying. It's not long at all. You need to get lap times in, and you need to get lap times in as quickly as you can. Just looking further down the field here, it's a very large grid today. 48 machines going to be racing around this very short circuit here, Cam, and that's going to be something to keep an eye out on, is those battles in the middle of the pack, which could really get feisty and dicey.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be too surprised here over this 38-lap race if something doesn't happen to the effect that is going to lead to some lap traffic. And when you start getting to be with lap traffic, I wouldn't be too surprised, especially with almost 50 cars here today. We don't start seeing the leaders get to the point where they're actually going to have to deal with cars that are in battles. And this track, it's tight, it's quick, the pit lane is very difficult to get onto, the risks are at all-time high, and then you add other cars onto it, and it just makes it a really great race, and it would be very interesting to see how these leaders take on any lap traffic they may come across.
Sebastian Joe bottled his lap. Paul Malocus goes quicker. Vinicius Rocha up into pole position for the 91 machine. 120.778. Doing a great job, and the times keep on coming down. Lionel Gamay couldn't go any quicker right now. Brian Dewell couldn't do too much, and you keep looking back further and further and further. Tom Ward couldn't do enough. What about Enzo Cantor here for the Thrustmaster Movano 924 machine? His run to the line. 121.4 needs to go quicker. 121.3 he does, but it's only position number 23. This is the bread and butter basic circuit, Cam. This is the one that everyone needs to work out on, and it's one where it can really throw up a few upsets. Grid is as follows. Vinicius Rocha will start on pole position, a 120.778. He's joined on the front row by championship leader Sebastian Joe. Philippe Lebert, Mr. 2K World Cup, will start from 3rd. Arian De Freitas, the reigning champion, in 4th, with Paul Malocus, 2nd in the championship last season, in 5th. Norbert Salzer will start in 6th, with Lionel Gamay and Tuan Tran rounding out row 4. And as we scroll further down, the likes of Greg Seitz, Michael Dalla Valle, you talk about the likes of Justin Tipton, Bastian Haussmann here today, Enzo Cantor oddly down the field. Talk about the likes of Tom Ward, and towards the back of the field, the likes of Remy Dupont and Craig Hobson as well will be looking to get some very good times in today. A long run, though, to turn number 1 is something that all these drivers need to be careful of. Something even more crucial that they have to be careful of here today is the pit stop strategy. It will be a one-stop here with only a 30-lap race, but what they have to remember is there is a lot of traffic to deal with on this circuit, and when you talk about this lap and the fact that your top 44 drivers are split by just 1.1 seconds out on circuit, it means that there is not much room to really be negotiating with in the early stages, especially with the fact that this track doesn't have any Herman Tilke designed runoff area. It is pretty much a club circuit. It's a lot of grass, it's a lot of gravel, and it's a lot about holding it on the island. Just 30 seconds then before we take to the starting grid. The last few vehicles looking to get themselves here on to the starting grid, and the inside line into turn number 1 will be very, very crucial indeed for many drivers to try and make some very, very important moves. And the also other important thing that has to be remembered is the track is no more than 3 wide at any given point during this race. 3 wide action is going to be so difficult for certain drivers to do. 3 seconds then till we grid up. We'll wait then for the green lights to come on. The engine notes now will start to get themselves revving up. and we are green, and we are go here at the circuit of Summit Point. Vinicius Rocha gets a good start here. Sebastian Job will be harried by the driver of Philippe Lebert, starting from third on the grid overall. And well, it seems that Paul Malocas here has had an absolute shocker of a start. He drops back a multitude of positions as they run down in towards turn number 1 for the very first time, and it seems that just for the moment Vinicius Rocha is clear. Lebert still looking for that opportunity in towards turn number 3 on circuit, side by side with Job. Job will have the inside for the difficult left-hander. Latest on the brakes, they'll stay side by side. They touch a little bit, and off to the gravel goes the driver of Philippe Lebert. Won't lose too much. Run to turn number 5 though, Cam. It's going to be so crucial between the two. Job's going to keep his foot in, hold it there down onto the inside, but Lebert's not giving an inch.
Yeah, the shoot extraordinarily quick, and then you go into this very fast switchback between 5 and 6 and 7. You're dancing on the outside. Sebastian Job, he's hovering just on that outside. He might have an in to clear Philippe Lebert if he can keep it through 8, and no, he is not able to. He'll have to relegate himself back down 1 position, but here he'll try to the inside. Now this is actually the dangerous part right here, the final corner of the track. It is not wise to take this too wide, especially when you are right in front of the entire field. Philippe Lebert, he'll have to back it on off, and he'll let that slide because there's 29 more laps to roll.
There are 29 more laps to roll, and it's Vinicius Rocha who leads this one now as the scrap continues. Ari de Freitas, and look at that from Philippe Lebert. Nowhere to go, had to back out. Norbert Sulzer now will look to take advantage of this. Ari de Freitas to the outside. They've lost a second and a half in the early goings. Too wide, too deep, down to the corner. Contact for Ari de Freitas, who will get bumped straight down the train past Malocas, likes of Game, and now with the likes of Greg Sykes alongside, with Tuan Tran just ahead. And at 6 positions, Cam, so easily lost.
Absolutely, and you only lost really maybe 1 second, if maybe, and so to lose that much is there's an absolute wad of cars heading their way towards the very fast corner number 4, 105, 106 miles an hour before they get into the very slow 50, 48 mile an hour shoot, and there goes somebody around. Lionel Gamut, he's gone around. He does not hit the tire barrier though, but he also is going to be losing himself a ton of positions.
Oh, and the train wreck continues here as the likes of Justin Tipton gets a little bit nosed up as the bottleneck happened, and there's a spin behind as well. 2 vehicles involved as it's the likes of, say, those who are trying to get out of the way. Barrier Renz, I believe, is one of the vehicles. Adam Blocker is one of the others. So 2 vehicles turn around at the very difficult, notorious section. Also also noting Colin Van Ram was another driver who got involved with an incident at turn number 2, or turn number 3 even, out on circuit. But at the front of the field, 2 seconds the gap now from Rocha to Sebastian Job. He's waltzed away in the early stages, and none of these drivers want to be in a situation where they lose time. Sulzer down to the inside. He's not going to be able to do it. Behind that, though, Arjen de Freitas looking to gain positions back. Tuan Tran having a stellar opening to the season, loses the position to the reigning champion.
Other thing to note, Stefan Stoyles, Tom Ward, David McDonald, and Enzo Canta, they all elected to start from the pit, just in case you're wondering perhaps why those familiar names might be well down the order. But for the most part, we've seen quite a bit of bumping, quite a bit of rubbing elbows, but so far not necessarily the big one you would expect to see. I think there was a fairly sizable junk back down in the 30s and back. But for the most part, it's been very hard racing, especially in this hot weather. 83 Fahrenheit, 112 on the track position. I know we heard the centigrade, but you might want to hear the Fahrenheit too to put it into perspective for our American listeners. But for the most part, though, we've seen a lot of very heavy racing as they're going to go 3 wide, way back in position number 30 just for a second, coming out of corner number 6.
Yes, and there was damage on Pascal Van den Hoek as they all clashed together. Van den Hoek and Leach came together when Leach ran off wide, and it's very difficult running wide at turn number 4 to actually save the vehicle here, Cam, because you have to really worry about hitting those brakes, and when you're braking on the grass, that's not going to be very useful. 3 wide, though, they're going to go on the run to turn number 1. Lap traffic in the way a little bit here as they try and navigate around. Diogo Francisco and Norbert Sulzer gets a massive wiggle, still trying to hold the vehicle together, does so, loses the position to Lebert, but now the train opens a bit. Malocas and Arjen de Freitas, the 2 teammates now going together side by side in towards turn number 3, and Arjen de Freitas will take that position away from Paul Malocas, who, as we know, Cam, likes to run long on the fuel.
Absolutely, and we saw just how wide de Freitas was taking that corner. Now, he's able to do that and pretty easily, but what'll end up start happening is that this track is going to start getting very, very sandy around Wagon Bend, corner number 3. So we'll have to see just how the sand starts heading in and say just how these guys are starting to work, because that corner is a fairly quick one, and you can start losing the rear if you do get too much sand on the circuit, especially if you're running too wide and you have to dance on the brakes.
Yeah, that's Philippe Laibert running off wide there, pushing a little bit too hard as he headed through turn number 9. The run to 10, he'll lose the position to Souza, and the pair of them might lose Sebastian Job in the process if they are not careful. Down the front straight they'll go again. Hard to the inside goes Laibert. He is blocked by Souza. Now we'll move to the outside to try and get the position back. And now, as if by magic, Arjen de Freitas closing in on the slipstream. The squeeze, they're not giving each other even racing room. And there's a car off in the background as well, having a big issue here, Cam. And it looks like Lionel Gamay for a second time.
Yeah, it was more than a big off. I think he ended up collecting a rear wheel Michael Delavale, and you can see why this is a club circuit. He went off, and he went up probably 20 feet into the air. And that was just simple physics there. That wasn't even anything crazy happening. That was just a gigantic ramp, as obviously this track being a club circuit, yes, there are trees and other obstacles off the racing surface, but my goodness me, Lionel Gamay, he went for quite a trip there.
Yes, he did. Look at the train behind De Freitas and Laibert as Laibert gets bumped down. Malocas, Tran, Seitz, Duell, Pai, Jimenez there, Dalla Valle involved with this, and Francisco and Tipton all there. Not all of them, though, battling for position. Only Francisco is 1 lap down in this train here, but Laibert is falling backwards. Another big wiggle. He's not liking the conditions, and now Paul Malocas may have an advantage. And Cam, the only thing I can really think about this is that Philippe Laibert maybe doesn't have his tyre pressures up correctly here, and he's having a big difficulty with a vehicle that you don't normally change too much on here, especially with the hot conditions today.
Alternatively, maybe he overcompensated, and now the tires are working horribly in the other direction. It's very easy to overcompensate for situations as well. One car is slow on the front stretch. Rob Adams, I believe that...
Sorry, that's Laibert and Malocas coming together, and now trying to join. Laibert gets a little tap from Malocas once again. Big moment between the pair of them. Laibert was trying to dive deep. Replay on screen there, Cam. And, well, you have to say from Laibert, didn't quite make the corner. Villeneuve-Schumacher 97.
Yeah, it was pretty straightforward to see that right front locked way up, just as we were talking about. The tire pressures maybe a little bit too hot. That tire, it really locked up fairly early on into the corner, too. I mean, he probably dragged that a good 20 feet, and Paul Malocas obviously nowhere to go. Thankfully, though, it doesn't appear that anyone managed to pick up any suspension damage.
No suspension damage indeed, but for Philippe Laibert, it's the horrible start to the season personified and continuing right now. Battle for P3 out on circuit. Arjen de Freitas versus Norbert Souza in the 209 machine. And now for Arjen de Freitas, he needs to get back into position. No real worries behind Tuan Tran, holding the train up, holding the fort, but he needs to find something to get back to the likes of, say, Sebastian Job and the driver of Vinicius Rocha, who are checking out a way here in this battle that is happening. De Freitas now moves to the inside. It is expected that he'll make the move here, and Souza's going to give him it without too much fighting. This is good in the early stages, Cam, because there's an element of fuel saving that needs to go on. There's also an element of picking and choosing your battles.
Absolutely, and I think these guys are starting to get a little worn in on how aggressive perhaps the early fighting has been, and of course it was very rightful to get that early fighting done and over with, but now we're only on lap 7 of 30, and I think people are realizing we keep this up, we're not going to make it to the end, so let's take her nice and easy. Now these guys just one car and one car, which is a fairly simple enough battle, but you look not that far behind. It's Seitz, Tron, Duell, Pai, Pena, Jimenez, Malocas, Dualavel, Tipton, and then Francisco all in one train going well back, and now these guys, well, they don't really have that luxury yet because everyone is still trying to make their way through.
A 1:53 lap time last time for Philippe Laibert, so the only thing I can suggest is maybe he's come down onto pit road, and yes, he has, so it means that he is now trying to go uber long. 23 laps around here is difficult. He may have to come in a second time. It's a gamble, but one that he can afford to take here today, Cam, because of the fact that he is so far down the order.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are actually finding themselves well down the order that they did not necessarily expect. I mean, I can obviously think of everyone who had started in pit lane as the battle for 4th position continuing. Tuan Tron looks to the inside of Greg's sights, and I think that that's actually a simple move, just as we were talking about earlier with the fuel, perhaps. But this, for some these drivers, I think they've almost been like sort of popped in the nose sort of situation where you're looking at it, you're like, how the heck did I end up all the way back here? And how am I going to have to find myself all the way back up front? I've been noticing pit lane is an extraordinarily busy place. Nearly every single lap, at least 1 or 2 cars are pulling in either to get their car repaired or something. I think it's well too early to try to get them actually fixed or anything, but either way, it's Summit Point Motorsports Park, and I have to say, if there's a track that is always a crapshoot, it seems to be this one.
Yeah, it certainly is at times, and well, it's going to be one which does funnel people back onto the racing circuit, and that's what sometimes people don't like, when it causes more incident than maybe the first domino does to tilt over the whole effect. And again, looking at Greg's sights then for the TT Racing machine, Brian Dale of the Positive Sim Racing team just behind, and the train Pi, him and Malokas, all there here looking to try and get positions. And maybe it might be a case that someone does come in early from this group here today, Cam, because of the fact that they are in a train of 6, they are maybe getting a little bit held up. But the point is, you need a dancing partner. You need someone to use that draft with you at every given stage. We see it with the front 2. They're gone. Here comes Greg Sights down to the inside of Tuan Tron into turn number 1. And you know what? That is as easy as you can possibly make it.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone, you can watch through the corner how they get off the throttle on the brake and then back on. They're actually kind of cycling through this corner. Normally, it's a fairly straightforward corner to take with your momentum, but when you're dealing with traffic in front and behind, it's actually quite the careful dance. So it's impressive, actually, that these guys are able to run this closely together without that much of an issue. Brian Duell, he's possibly maybe looking around. He's trying to find some grip, perhaps, where he can find a hole shot. Now, going forward, as time slowly starts to run out, you start to look at where you're going to be able to make a maneuver when you've got a situation like everyone running into a train. They actually just passed one there. The exit to 4, the chute, going into that hairpin, someone can actually keep straight and sort of dive to the inside. It's a very risky maneuver, but they can do it. And then if anyone gets side by side here through this S's section, that can also open the door. But we'll start to see, after the chaos of the start of this race, we'll start to see these duels develop.
Yeah, we certainly will. Battle going on, though, P13 and down. Kane Halliburton, Bastian Houseman, John Ocken and Bill Fraser all there fighting for these lower positions. But this is the thing that drivers have to remember here today, Cam. It's the fact that points are very much a commodity at times. You need to make sure that you're scoring as many points as you can, as Bastian Houseman then will go down to the inside of Kane Halliburton. Halliburton will let him have it here, and if he's not careful, maybe John Ocken might send one down the inside. He's not close enough on the brakes into 1.
Yeah, and I think these guys are just, as we were saying, they're slowly starting to wind it on down to be a little bit more careful. As just looking back further afield, 25th position, Andrew S. Leach and Roman Kajka. They're not so much going around each other politely, as Casey Black is also there as Leach makes the position, and Black looks to perhaps go alongside against the Blackadder Motorsports car of Roman Kajka, but he'll look to the outside actually here, and he'll end up giving up a position there. He had the position to perhaps hold 2 wide through this very fast corner number 3, but he ended up falling back 1 position. That's actually allowing Stefan Stoyles, one of our pit starters, to make the attack.
Yes, and now Stoyles down to the inside at turn number 4, and thank you very much. Roman Kajka's not going to have anything to do with that one. Down onto the brakes into the very, very difficult turn number 5, and now the technical outfield complex, you could say, of the circuit of Summit Point. But to look further forward here and further afield in this race, you also have this battle. Michael Dalla Valle, Justin Tipton, and Diogo Francisco not involved in this fight, but he's 1 lap down and using these vehicles in front of him as a little buffer here. He's not getting involved in this, Cam. That's something to keep in mind here with the battle that's going on here on lap 10 out of 30, so the pit stop window is now officially open. But he's just staying there, tagging along and looking to try and gain positions from other vehicles that just run into a very, very horrible day.
And I think we've seen at this point that everyone who was going to have something happen like that sort of has had that happen. And so at this point, I almost start to say you probably should be looking to make your maneuvers and make your pressured through again, because we saw early on, you know, we had 48 some odd cars that were really, well, 47 took the grid, that really had a rough time. This was a pretty tough start, I think, for a lot of drivers. A lot of people picked up damage. I actually just noticed Philippe Lebert, he's back in 33rd position because he had to pit. But either way, I think the easy positions are done, and now it's just going to be tough racing from here.
It will be battle for P5 though on Greg Seitz versus Tuan Tran et al. Here with the likes of Brian Dale, Kartik Pai and others in this train right now. But a little wide there off the exit of turn number 10 was the driver of Greg Seitz. He will get to the line the fastest, but what he has to remember is he's got to be careful about how he battles with Tuan Tran as they look to trade positions pretty much like cyclists in the peloton that you'd see in the Tour de France here, Cam, because it's a case of working together to close down the gaps to the likes of Solzer and Arjen de Freitas, who are on the breakaway. Worth also talking about, Sebastian Job just closed in 0.4 of a second on Vinicius Rocha on that last lap.
Yeah, and I almost think there are at least some lapped cars. I did note that one, Brian J. Kelly, and there was another one, Diego Francisco, who was involved in an incident early on. So there are at least some lap traffic. Not saying that that's why Sebastian Job was able to gain so much time. Perhaps Vinny is just starting to use his tires. Perhaps his tires are not that comfortable, but obviously I'd have to say both of them are extraordinarily comfortable. I mean, really, they are doing qualifying lap times, and if you look at Sebastian Job, he would have had pole by 0.4 that last lap.
Yes, and that just shows you how important the draft or the fringes of it can sometimes be when you're pushing, when you're trying to get yourself into play. Let's take a look then at the times as both drivers stay out from pit road. Time going to be for Vinicius Rocha, 1:20.570. Great lap time. Sebastian Job knocks off 70 thousandths of a second, brings the gap down to 1.8 here on circuit right now. And for the train, though, a P4 backwards right now, Cam. They've got a little issue here. They've got to all negotiate Brian J. Kelly here as lap traffic, and Tuan Tran with a little bit of a wiggle through turn number 1 will be the driver who is the most scared going through, because for Brian J. Kelly, he knows that once he lets one through, he's got to let the entire train go by.
Yeah, I mean, and for Tuan Tran, I mean, the suspension and the throttle input's overdoing what the tires could do, and that almost looked like a 1970s Formula car trying to rip through that corner, obviously at a much slower speed, but still, that was, it's pretty impressive trying to look people wrangle corner number 1 as here they go. I think they'll have to stay at this point now behind that lapped car until at least corner 9, and if everything works out the right way, like I'd expect it to going through these corners, Kelly should be able to let everyone through before they hit Paddock Bend, but there might just be too many cars in this train. We'll have to see.
Well, yeah, it certainly is something that we are going to see, and with the window open, the leading two decide to stay out again. Will De Freitas or Solzer come down onto pit road? No, is the answer. They'll continue on. In fact, Brian Kelly does the very, very interesting thing. He drops down onto the lane to avoid everyone. On the back of that, though, there is one driver coming down to pit road. That's Paul Malocas, and Paul Malocas, normally someone who stays out late, today he's going to go for the early stop, and that's going to be a big, big benefactor because they don't change tyres. It's down on lap time alone here for him to get that undercut.
No, but I'm pretty sure that they can at least adjust air pressure. They can maybe take some air out whilst they're putting the fuel in the car if he needs it. I have a feeling, though, he's comfortable with the car. His lap times has been consistent from the very start of this race to right where we are now, so I have a feeling perhaps not, as he'll come out right in front of Stefan Stoyles and Casey Black as they push right on through. 12.8 seconds as here comes Stefan Stoyles on the inside of Casey Black. He'll actually start to let the position up early. He actually thought he might have conceded that, but no, in fact, Stoyles comes back under braking, and right in behind, I see Remy Dupont. He ends up going wide on the exit of corner number 1.
Yes, he does here as they're all looking to scrap it out. For Paul Malocas, though, disaster, because he now has to negotiate Black and Stoyles, both for position. And I don't think either of them want to let up here for Malocas to let other people go through in these stages. When we cross the start-finish line, we're about to start halfway. Sebastian Job from P2 bites the bullet and comes down to pit road, and he will be the first of the main players to really make an important stop here today, Cam. And it's all about perfection right now. Sebastian Job needs perfection exactly personified to get himself into a battle with Vinicius Rocha. The gap was 1.7.
It was. We'll see where he comes out. I mean, it's looking right now he's on pit lane, and if he comes out, it might be, he might have a clean track. Yeah, 14.7. and he'll come out. No, he does not have a clean track. In fact, as Anthony Catt and Adam Blocker are going to be ahead of him, and so we'll see here just whereabouts he's going to find himself. He does come out ahead of Paul Malokis, and actually by quite a substantial margin, although he might have gone into the pits with that. He'll find himself, I think he's a little bit more comfortable here. He at least has some room.
Yeah, I think he does have some room. Something to actually note, though, with Paul Malokis' stop being, I believe, 2 seconds quicker than the driver of Sebastian Job, you have to argue he's maybe taken a little less fuel than everyone else here, and the fuel saving in the early stages has allowed him to do so, to gain a little bit of time out on circuit. That will be worth talking about when this train of 5 comes in, because it may be that those 2 seconds could be paramount in terms of the race. Vinicius Rocha decides that he will stay out that little bit longer out on circuit, as we should take a look at Remy Dupont in position number 21 out on circuit. Look at this fantastic battle side by side with Enzo Cantor. Cantor not going to give any room here, but is stuck on the outside for the big long right-hander here of this section. Gets a good run coming out of the corner now, Cam, but has to back out of it because he was caught off on the inside.
Yeah, that's actually a bit of an angled corner, so that inside line really is able to sort of get more push, I think, at least pushing to the S's, and once you're in the S's, very much single file. But Enzo Cantor very bold on the outside of corner number 4, and here comes Remy Dupont into pit lane. So we'll see exactly where he's going to come on out, as now it's Cantor, Kashka, and Kopech. So we'll see pit lane getting to be a very busy place. Bill Fraser and Michael Dallavale now pulling out.
Yeah, Dallavale pulling out of pit road then, so most of your midfield now deciding it's time to come in and maybe a little bit wider of a pit road window, shall we say, here today, mainly because there has been a lot of drafting, a lot of ability to really fuel save around here. But at the front of the field, now with a gap of 5.6 seconds to your race lead, to second place Arjen de Freitas, is Vinicius Rocha, who decides to dive down onto pit road then for his first and only stop. Inch perfect as he gets himself down onto the brakes. Is he followed? No. The other 2 drivers there of de Freitas and Souza decide to stay out here, Cam. Down onto pit road, though, comes David Pena Jimenez right now, and Jimenez needs a very good stop to beat the driver of Paul Malokis.
Yeah, and we'll see where Rocha comes out. We'll see where everyone else is starting to come out, as David Pena Jimenez has actually had to reverse back into his pit stop and manage to get his work. So Vinicius Rocha, he pulls out. He actually gets a very slow getaway as he'll pull out, but he has an absolutely clear track. That's exactly what he's wanted to see. And Sebastian Job, on the other hand, he has Kane Halliburton now between him and Vinicius Rocha. So Rocha, if he uses it, he's got some space to go. Actually, you know what? Halliburton will give that position up very good.
And the overspeed coming into play for Sebastian Job, who's brought himself back into the fight with the driver of Vinicius Rocha. So Sebastian Job doing the work in the stop, a slow stop from Rocha, and crucially enough, it brings back into play Sebastian Job in the battle for the race victory here today. Keep an eye out, though, on the battle between these 2 at the front of the field now. Arjen de Freitas and Norbert Souza, net race lead right now, but it's not going to be representative when they come down onto pit road. These 2 have been working together to try and bring that gap down. You feel that the gap, as they both come down onto pit road, needs to work. A battle of pit crews between the pair of them right now, and just coming off of pit road right now is Colin Van Ram. So now for Arjen de Freitas, who does have the earlier pit stall box advantage, surely has to go to him.
We'll see here as the tickers all start ticking for this entire train. Twan, he ends up sliding past his pit. He had to put it in reverse and just go back into his stall, so he's not going to be happy with that. We'll see. De Freitas, will he be the first one to move? Yes, he will, so it's De Freitas away. The 12.9, Brian Dowell is away, and he actually had a very good stop. Greg Seitz, this is a very open exit for pit lane, so they are actually exiting too wide, but Tuan Tron ends up coming out ahead of Greg Seitz, so Greg Seitz loses a position. Karthik Pai shadowing behind, and here comes Paul Malokis.
Paul Malokis then using that overspeed, 2 wide it is. He'll decide to send it down the inside to try and make it 3 wide here. Tuan Tron stuck on the outside, and Malokis' gamble has slightly paid off. He's gained a couple of positions here on the likes of Greg Seitz, Tuan Tron, but in front of that, Brian Dowell has gained some brilliant time on the driver of Norbert Souza, who went safe on the fuel, and is an engine blown as well there, and that's a big engine blow as well, Cam.
Brian Doyle, he's lost it coming going into corner number 3. He lost the engine, and I don't even think I heard him shifting, so something must have happened with that car. Maybe overheating, maybe he had some rear end damage from earlier on, but they just left pit lane, so it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't have them take a look and possibly repair that. So very unusual from Brian Doyle. I didn't hear the gear shift.
He didn't hear the gear shift, so it's only a partial engine blow. It's the biggest oil leak. It's the smoke pouring out, and he actually decided to cut over that chicane as the lead battle, though, hotting up right now as it's Rocha versus Job. Job to the inside. He may start thinking about it as they cross the line. The difference in time, 0.2 of a second, down to the inside with 12 laps to go. Thank you very much, Sebastian Job. Oh, he leaves next to no room down into turn number 1, and now Rocha wants to come straight back at him, and you know what? He will, but he's stuck on the outside heading towards turn number 3. Be careful on the engines, though. They do get incredibly hot, especially with the hot conditions here today. That's what caught out the driver of Brian Doyle, who is now down on pit road. Job has the position.
Yeah, that was our first engine-related casualty of the day, but we will see if we will have any more. Sebastian Job, he gets the position for Vinicius Rocha. I would be okay with this at this point, because maybe if I short-filled, I now know that if I just stay behind Sebastian Job for a little bit, I'm going to be able to pass him onto the last lap, and then after that, it's gangbusters. So we'll see here between Sebastian Job and Vinicius Rocha with 11 laps to go here at the circuit. They really shouldn't have to worry too much about traffic until maybe 5-6 laps from now, because the car that they're counting on, they're running 121s, 122s. So really, as these guys are running about a second and a half faster, should be maybe, yeah, about 4 or 5 laps before these guys start to get a lap track profit.
Yeah, 4 or 5 laps, and already Vinicius Rocha moving to the right-hand side of the circuit. That is to get out of the tow and to cool the engine rather than to make that overtake, and that is crucial because he is trying now to run Sebastian Job out of fuel because he took less on the tank than what Vinicius Rocha did in his stop. So for Vinicius Rocha, he needs to now know what he needs to do to keep behind. Otherwise, he's waiting for the last lap opportunity to make the move, the vital move that gives him the race victory overall. Side by side, though, further back, Tuan Tran versus Kartik Pai in towards turn number 3, back off a P7 out on circuit, and the defense is held by the driver of Tuan Tran, who will lose the momentum, though, coming through the corner. Cut backwards trying from Kartik Pai, but he's not got much time to work with on the run through 4 and 5. He'll have to stay behind Cam.
Yeah, I think that's smart. If he really wanted to push that, he would have slowed down a little bit earlier, giving Tuan the corner, and then really focus on his corner exit. He should have been able to at least pull alongside going through 4 and then into a hairpin, but that takes a lot of commitment, and you know what? It's just not worth it because you've got that long front stretch, and besides, I'm pretty sure these guys, they would much rather keep in touch with Paul Malocas and Greg Seitz rather than starting their fight now. Because as Paul Malocas possibly looking to the inside of Greg Seitz to go on the bridge, he's not going to do that as they go through the final corner. This long trailing front stretch really sort of changes this race course. If it was any shorter, I have a feeling it would really be one only particular way, but with this very long stretch where you can pull out, as you can see Paul Malocas, and just absolutely go by somebody, it really sort of makes the circuit kind of unique on its own.
Yeah, it certainly does. That long straight becoming very advantageous. This is the circuit that all drivers in iRacing learn their basics on, their bread and butter of overtaking and driving and pace, and it's just built into the back of your hand, so you know how to drive this to the best of your ability. So the driver of Paul Malocas moving back up then into position number 5 overall on circuit. Let's take a look though at the drivers who are making big gains through the field, and there are some drivers lower down who have gained some astonishing positions here today Cam. Barry Arenz is up an astonishing 16 positions here. Talk about Christian Cabanco, who started P35. He's up 20, and he has the opportunity to get back past Adam Blocker, so now he's only plus 19.
Yeah, and there are some drivers who really should have been doing quite a bit better, but just hasn't had that happen. Philippe Lebert, he started 3rd. He actually just put the fastest lap in. He is covering back in 23rd position, fighting with Anthony Catt for 21st and 22nd, right? With Tom Ward, not quite sure exactly why he would want to have started from pit lane, maybe because he had qualified 20th. We're 8 in the mid-pack, didn't want to be finding himself collecting through the field, and he's only put back up to maybe where he qualified at the end of this race. But a couple of other cars, Brian Dewell, obviously with his engine issue, not exactly what he would have wanted. But Lionel Gamut, obviously not what he wanted to do, ending his day by flying through the air. But this track really giveth and taketh away.
It certainly does. Barry Arendz out on pit road then to make his pit stop, and well, Barry Arendz will now drop further back through the field. He gets himself going and will need to get past the start-finish line. Very interestingly though, the start-finish line is actually after the pit straight here, so technically you could serve a penalty on the final lap, get out and get back going again. He now finds himself in this little train with the likes of John Ocken, John Morgan, David McDonald, Casey Black versus Remy DuPont side by side. So around P26 out on circuit as Remy DuPont is going to get a little bit of a tap there from the driver Casey Black as he makes his way past. But lower pack battling here, and these are all some very important scraps for points here, Cam.
Yeah, and it really is some good running. Excuse me, as I'm also seeing there's pretty much some decent fighting going all the way back. I'm looking all the way back to John Morgan and John Oken. These guys are also fighting side by side as they're going their way towards corner number 4. Morgan ends up getting the position, and there's number 177 as they head through the carousel. But you're really seeing really good fights between 2 cars, 3 cars at a time. Is just looking back up ahead to the number 5th position of Greg Seitz, the 74 car, who's being pursued by Paul Malocas, Tuantron, and Karthik Pai. These guys are still going at it, and actually, Tuantron and Karthik Pai, they've worked together, or not, maybe, I don't know, but they've managed to catch back up to Greg Seitz and Paul Malocas, and that makes things very interesting.
It makes things very interesting, this 4-car battle. Remember, the last time we had a 4-car battle at Summit Point with Skip Barbers, it was the man at the front of the train, Greg Seitz, who blew his engine up on the final lap and dropped him away. Tom Ward now setting the fastest lap. I believe he would have had a penalty to start this race. That may be one of the reasons he had to start down from pit road. But in position number 20, Tom Ward absolutely flying, as we know how well he can do from the UKNI Monday night skippies that we see with Rachel and the gang, which you can see from here yet again tomorrow evening as well. But at the front of the field, Rocha versus Job, the battle between the core sim racing machine and one of the drivers who certainly can make it very, very difficult for anybody to get their way past. Close again is the driver of Vinicius Rocha, but just looking at him, he is lifting here, heading towards the start-finish straight. He could have made the move if he wanted to, and again, tucked in right underneath the gearbox, close, but not really close enough. Look at this scrap though for P5 though, Cam, as we see Greg Seitz go straight through on Paul Malocas.
Yeah, and so he's going to, well, defend the position, I guess I should say, from Paul Malocas. But Tuantron and Karthik Pai, as they work their way still now, these two haven't changed position yet, and I'm kind of starting to wonder that maybe Karthik Pai is in pursuit rather than on the attack. He wants to stay back there simply because he's had an ample opportunity now. The, 5-6 times they've gone down the front stretch where he really could have pulled along side and made the position, but so it wouldn't surprise me if he is trying to save some fuel, and it wouldn't surprise me also, going all the way to the front of the field, if Vinicius Rocha isn't doing the same.
Yes, and that is just to keep an eye out on then in these battles and just hold yourself in position maybe for a little bit of an opportunity for Karthik Pai. You could also argue that he's waiting to see if there's going to be any incident between the vehicles ahead so that he can pick himself a couple of positions. You'd say he's in the catbird seat right now, and that is going to be so crucial for him in terms of this battle. They round the final corner then, and again, very wide this time from the driver, Greg Seitz. Controls it in the gravel, very difficult to do, but a light amount will keep himself through. Battle for the race lead though going on. Rocha goes down to the inside and takes the position, and I think Sebastian Job doesn't want to give it back here. He'll try and go side by side, so Rocha now decides to take control of the race, but you know what? I think the driver Sebastian Job doesn't want to give him anything of it. Side by side into 3, that's not going to work. Cut back to 4 though, Cam. It is going to work though. He's going to go to the outside. Very difficult here. Side by side they'll stay. He was side by side for almost the whole lap on lap number 1. He's trying again here on the outside line, which worked for Leibert last time. It's not going to work for him here.
Yeah, cut back will put him on the outside of the these S's here, and he'll actually try to cut once again, but that will not work, so Sebastian Job, he'll have to relegate himself to position number 2. Perhaps Rocha's now saved enough fuel and knows he can comfortably make the finish of this race, so now he can push and try to see what they can do, or perhaps he's trying to learn, he's trying to see, trying to probe out defenses. because the last thing you want to do is see what your opponent's going to do on the last lap. You want to learn what they're going to do before then. So Vinicius Rocha, as he will lead at least this lap, like many other laps before, Sebastian Job, he's going to pull along to the outside. Vinicius Rocha defending inside. I think these guys are at this point almost starting to just practice and get ready, as we've got 4 laps to go.
5 laps to go even as we head over the start-finish line. On the brakes, late though goes Vinicius Rocha down to turn number 1. They touch, the pair of them touch, but they hold it together, and Joe gets a wiggle out of the corner, and the position is his. So Vinicius Rocha will stay behind after all of that, and that's very, very crucial between the pair of them. Joe was on the outside, Rocha on the inside, and Rocha's done. Rocha's got damage, Rocha is out, and surely Sebastian Job now has the victory of the race, Cam.
Yeah, Rocha was on the inside. We're taking a look at the replay of that turn 1 incident. Vinicius Rocha, nothing locked up. It's hard to sort of lean blame on that one. Job did not leave any sort of room on the inside, but at the same time, he was taking the natural racing line. So right now, Vinicius Rocha, of course, he picked up suspension damage from that rim-to-rim contact, and either way, though, they're going to have to take a look at this post-race, certainly, to try and maybe affect some sort of blame or something like that. But for Vinicius Rocha, he waited all that time behind to see, to probably save all that fuel, and it was all for nothing.
It was in the end, and that is a shame. Battle, though, going on for position number 4 now out on circuit with the loss of Vinicius Rocha here today. Paul Malocus, Greg Seitz, Tuan Tran, Kartik Pai. The points are more and more crucial, and at the front of the field, 3.4 seconds for Sebastian Job, looking to become a 2-time winner this season. Malocus, though, here having to play the defensive game down into turn number 1. We know how it worked for Rocha, but for Paul Malocus, knows how to defend against Greg Seitz here with just 4 laps to go. Does a very good job of holding the position and doing a very good job of keeping himself into play right now. And you have to feel, if you are towards that rear of the field, the likes of Kartik Pai right now here, Cam, you've got to start making moves.
Now, that's if he saved enough fuel. Of course, his pit time was shorter, so you never know, maybe, I imagine with how long he has been sitting back there, and actually here he goes, he must be listening to us here on RaceSpotTV, but he's put himself, I think, maybe in the outside marbles. These cars don't produce a ton of marbles, but they do eventually, you try to maybe look to the outside of the carousel. That didn't, nothing would come of that regardless. I don't think any car or driver can make it stick to the outside of the carousel unless they committed through the exit of 4, but either way, Kartik Pai, I think he's going to start on going if he's saved enough fuel.
Yes, he certainly will look to try and get on going. I just want to keep an eye on Sebastian Job's lap time, see if there is any damage on the vehicle. 120.6, well, there's certainly no damage at all if he's only 2/10 off of his fastest lap, and now pulling away. But look at the train snake then for the drivers behind Paul Malocus, and now Greg Seitz looking to go to the outside then into turn number 1 with just 3 laps to go in the event. Kartik Pai, Noah's Ark, side by side, too wide, too deep, down into the corner. Little bit of contact, Malocus and Seitz. That's going to give Tuan Tran here the run towards turn number 3. Stuck on the outside is always going to be difficult for him to make the move, but he's got 3/4 of a car length here as he looks to try and get his Oreo-shaped tyre past the Greg Seitz's Oreo-shaped tyre, and it means that they're going to remain side by side. Kartik Pai wants a piece of the action, could make it 3 wide down into turn number 4. I don't think that's a good idea. Seitz will get the nose ahead, but here comes Kartik Pai down to the inside of Tuan Tran. Tran trying to hold it around the outside, and well, what a great battle it is, and it will continue.
It absolutely will, as they're going through corners number 6, corners number 7 here between the S's of 7, 8, and 9 as they're continuing their 2-wide battle. Kartik Pai, though, I think he will get the position. Yes, he will on the exit of 9 as there is one car stopped. Colin Von Rom well off into the grass, so no concerns there as they're going to drag their way towards corner number 10, Paddock Bend. They're going to lean themselves well to the outside, surely, as these guys are really hustling, and actually a little bit too much. Kartik Pai, he ends up taking a little bit of a hill, and that should actually give Tuan Tran quite a hasty overspeed unless he also had some issues.
Yes, and now the run with 2 laps to go then for the drivers of Tran and Pai. If you were Tuan Tran, where do you do it, Cam?
Well, it's going to have to come on the exit of corner number 3 if he can make it work. Brian Kelly, that green car, you can see he's right there, but he is not in this battle. He's in 35th position, so I have a feeling he's going to politely excuse himself from the battle. But for Karthik Pai and for Tuan Tron, I almost think that Karthik Pai is smart. He didn't leave enough time for Tuan Tron to study Karthik Pai's lines and see where he perhaps can try to make a pass, because there's only a couple laps left.
Couple laps left. It will be the last lap when Sebastian Job next crosses the line for the Core Sim Racing team. And now it's a case of these battles lower down to sort themselves out. The likes of Paul Malocus versus Greg Seitz here. Karthik Pai versus Tuan Tran, and even further back the likes of Michael Dalla Valle versus Bastian Hausmann for positions numbers 9 and 10 out on circuit. Some great battles to go in to this final lap of the event, but we'll focus on this one for position number 4 out on circuit. Round the final corner, Seitz and Malocus. Malocus needs to use all of his ability to break away. He moves to the inside. Maybe he'll start weaving down this straight, but Greg Seitz is closing in like a hurricane down towards turn number 1 that the pair of them are going to go. It's got to be a late one here from Greg Seitz, and he's going to try and break as late as he can, but he's not going to be able to get it down on the inside into turn number 4. Behind that, down to the inside goes the driver of Karthik Pai, holding the defense against that driver of Tuan Tran. Hopefully Brian Kelly will not be involved in this battle between those two as they head towards turn number 3. You feel there's not many opportunities left for that driver of Greg Seitz to make that move. Maybe the final corner, maybe down on the brakes here into turn number 5. Run of 4 then, right-hander flat out, no light lift from Greg Seitz, down onto the brakes he goes. No opportunity for that to happen. But now eyes have to turn then to the driver of Sebastian Job, who just has 2 corners to go to make sure that he is a 2-time winner this season. And with a double header coming up in 2 weeks' time, Sebastian Job must be relishing the advantage that he has at the moment. Round the final corner goes the Core Sim Racing machine, and he did it all in the stops. Little bit of controversy with the incident, but that's here or there. Sebastian Job will win at Summit Point Raceway in a very dominating fashion over Arjen de Freitas. Battle for P4 is side by side. Malocus will just about hold on, Cam, to that position. What a great scrap that was.
Arjen de Freitas sputtered across the line, but yes, Karthik Pai will keep the position over Tuan Tran. And I gotta say, looking back, Michael Dalla Valle will be able to keep his position over Bastian Heisman. Looking just a little bit further back, I see a massive swarm of cars. Tom Ward is leading maybe the next 4 or 5 positioned cars as they're working their way through. And Tom Ward, he will have the position, and it looks like they're going to all be in single file going their way through. No real room to drag race. They're going to make it 3 wide, but no real battling there as they will continue to come across. And I have a feeling the rest of the field just going to make their way across the start-finish line.
P17 for Philippe Lebert, and that is a horrible result for him, just collecting points and nothing else from that. Brian Doyle with the damage on with the engine. It's going to be P29 for the 88 machine, and that is a very shameful performance for the Canadian driver. P27 actually overall when all is going to be done, and the last of the vehicles heading themselves over to the line. Let's get ourselves then official classified results from Summit Point Raceway here on the Skip Barber 2K World Cup Series. Sebastian Job takes the victory by 4.5 seconds in the end over the reigning champion and championship rival Arjen de Freitas. Norbert Sulzer will come home in 3rd. Paul Malocus will finish in 4th position overall. Greg Seitz in 5th. Karthik Pai beating out Tuan Tran to the line. Phil Fraser will make up 10 positions up into 8th overall. Michael Dalla Valle will finish 9th, and rounding out the top 10 is Bastian Hausmann. Justin Tipton will finish 11th with Chris Malcolm 12th. And you got the likes of Tom Ward, P13 from starting on pit road. Philippe Lebert, his issues only P17 today. Enzo Cantor, P20. Talk about the likes of Marco Derricks, P23. But great work for Casey Black, though, up 20 positions for his day. And vehicles that didn't manage to finish it here today are the likes of John Morgan, Colin Van Ram, Vinicius Rocha from the race lead. The likes of Craig Hobson, Lionel Game, Mike McCormick, Ryan Walker, and Michael Halford Hassan. But for the time being, we're just going to step aside for a moment, because when we come back, the post-race show coming to you on RaceSpotTV and iRacing Live. You're watching the Skip Barber 2K World Cup Series.
Introducing a whole new form of racing to the best online racing simulation in the world. This is Dirt Racing on iRacing.com. Race online at some of America's most legendary dirt tracks, including Eldora and Williams Grove. iRacing is the premier online racing game featuring NASCAR, IndyCar, sports cars, and now World of Outlaws, the leading sanctioning body for dirt racing. iRacing is easy to use and features a centralized ranking system to make sure you have the best experience at any skill level. With a massive inventory of high-precision laser scan tracks and cars with an unmatched dedication to quality and detail, iRacing gives you the most authentic online racing experience available. Thanks to iRacing's dynamic track system, developed specifically for dirt racing, tracks change over the course of a race, just like your favorite dirt track on a Friday or Saturday night. From a slick racing groove all the way up to the cushion, iRacing's dirt tracks deliver non-stop racing action. Partnered with the World of Outlaws, iRacing is your source for the most authentic dirt racing experience available, featuring 4 brand new tracks and 11 new cars, including street stocks, Legends cars, late models, NASCAR trucks, winged and non-winged sprint cars, with much more on the way. Join the Dirt Revolution on iRacing.com and start slinging mud today.
Well, after thrills, spills, and all the spoils, it's 2 out of 3 for Sebastian Job. He's won the last 2 straight here in the Skip Barber 2K World Cup Series, streaming live on iRacing Live and brought to you here on RaceSpotTV. I am #DoYouMind, Jake Sparey, joined alongside, as always, by Mr. Cameron Walsh. And, well, right now we are going to get ourselves into the interview phase here at RaceSpotTV. Joining us first and foremost is the driver that came home in 2nd position overall, Mr. Arjen de Freitas. Arjen, a difficult start for you today. Started in position number 4, and it was battles, battles, battles all throughout the opening stages.
Yeah, the opening stages were insane. I don't know what happened. Philippe and Norbert were all over the place, and then Seth hit me in turn 1 and basically ruined my chances for the win. But yeah, pretty happy I came in 2nd in the end, but could have been better.
Could have been better, but there was a little bit of fortune with your racing. You were battling quite hard in the middle of the race with Norbert Solzer behind. You had a better pit stop than him. You broke away, and you saw pulling off to the side of the road a certain Mr. Vinicius Rocha. So in terms of the way that you were racing out there today, do you feel that had it not been for that lap 1 side-by-side for a lap between Job and Leibert, that you may have had a shot of winning this?
I think so. In the end, I had a good pit stop, but I underfueled slightly, so I had to save a bit, so I couldn't get really closer to Sepp and Finny. And I don't know what happened between them. I saw Finny pulled off, giving me 2nd place, so I mean, it could have been worse, but it could have been better as well.
It certainly could have been better, but in 2 weeks' time, it's the double header at Silverstone. And the last time we had a double header at Silverstone, I remember you did very, very well there, Arjen. So in terms of reverse grid racing, what's your opinion of it and how do you feel about it?
I kind of like it. It brings some different strategies in the mix. It brings different people in the mix. So in the end, it's always good fun to watch with the sprint race and the longer race after it. It's, again, tricky. I mean, last season in Road America, I got crashed out in the first, and I came back from 52nd in the second race. So, I mean, I kind of like it, but if the first race goes massively wrong, you're pretty screwed for the next race as well.
You certainly can be, but second position here today. Shout out sponsors. Who gets it done for you?
Yeah, obviously to my team, PSR. Again, we're doing pretty good. Doing an awesome job. Sepp is doing really well as well. So, yeah, looking forward to fighting him for the championship. And obviously, thanks to you guys and Philippe for all of this.
Well, not to worry at all. Arjen de Freitas coming home in second position overall. And in the number 4 machine comes the driver who finished in position number 4. It's the driver of Paul Malocas standing by with Mr. Cameron Walsh.
Paul Malocas, well, you started in 5th, you finished in 4th. I mean, obviously, just by looking at that, pretty much nothing must have happened then.
Yeah, it was a boring race, so thanks, guys.
Yeah, all right. No, Summit Point, I mean, it's just this little track in West Virginia, yet here on iRacing, it seems to always bring out probably some of the craziest racing I think we can possibly ever see, no matter the car that races on it, whether it's a Lotus 79 prototypes or these Skip Barber cars. Every season, the 2K series makes a stop here, and it's always a pretty wild race.
Yeah, it's always fun and interesting to come here because you get the great racing and then you throw in a blown engine or 4, and yeah, it's always exciting from start to finish.
I have to say this is probably one of the hottest races I've seen in the year. 82 Fahrenheit, 112 on the track surface. These tires, they're not too crazy, but I'm surely this must have affected them somehow.
Yeah, this was one of the few times you could actually get oversteer coming out of the corners. Like you could spin it up in first and second gear going through the S's.
Yeah, which you're doing quite frequently, especially on a track like this. That start, that was definitely something. 47 cars all hustling their way towards turn number 1. The track's great for single file racing, for individual duels, but those first 3 or 4 laps, that was some white knuckle stuff.
Yeah, I actually got a really bad jump off the line and lost a spot and almost a second. But then, yeah, the first few laps are always crazy because everybody's tight together and people are trying to move up while everybody is close together. So it was really interesting. There were some crazy battles, and I was just trying to stay safe and out of trouble. But Philippe and I came together on lap, I don't know, I would guess 5, and it sent me back about 5 spots. And then after that, I was just trying to move back forward.
Yeah, and you did end up coming back. You had a whole train with you, with Seitz and Karthik Pai and Tuan Tron. But overall, a good day here at Summit Point. Looking ahead, it's Silverstone for the double heads. How are you looking forward to that?
Well, I hope it's better than last time we went there. I got crashed out in the first one and did a pretty good run in the second one. But we'll see. It should be interesting. I've never actually done the Skippy on the GP circuit, so I'm guessing it'll be pretty drafty and an interesting race as usual.
Well, most certainly. Anyone you would like to give a shout out to before we cut you loose?
Oh, just thanks to you guys and Philippe for putting it on, and all the PSR guys for making it entertaining all the time. Thanks.
Well, I'd like to thank you for hopping in with us and giving us the interview. So thanks very much, and we'll see you at Silverstone.
You're welcome.
So, Jake, after Paul Malocas, we've got somebody who had finished well down the grid. Is Philippe Laibert. Normally we don't interview the car that finished in 17, but you do when it's Philippe Laibert. And, Jake, you take it away.
Yeah, Philippe, a poor day at the office for you. You can't be feeling happy, but it just seemed today that getting off the train's the easy thing, but getting back onto the train is a much different matter.
Well, I didn't really want to be interviewed. I was here just for safety rating. No, it was a really bad race. There's going to be a lot of talk after this one, I'm sure, because the first 4 laps, 5 laps, it was like a madhouse. I don't know what everybody has been eating or drinking, but that was just crazy. I don't know if you saw that.
Well, we saw quite a few incidents happen in the early stages. You did manage to make your way back through the field, had the likes of Tom Ward to help you get yourself back through certain areas, and you were setting fastest lap, and in fact got fastest lap of the race. So you certainly do have something to take home with you from Summit Point.
Well, I wasn't really paying attention to that. I was just I didn't want to quit. I thought about it, but I just wanted to finish as high up as possible and have some fun. And I just want to say congrats to Seb, not only for winning, but for that first lap. We were side by side the whole lap, and I don't think that's ever happened at Summit Point, so that was pretty awesome.
A pretty special battle. So for a 2K World Cup organiser, Mr. 2K World Cup, Felipe Bear, finishing home a little further down the order in position number 17. But unfortunately, that's all we're going to have time for here today, ladies and gentlemen. A huge thank you to all the drivers and to all the teams and to all of you who have been watching at home. Don't forget, there is so much more that is going on with RaceSpotTV here over the next week. We've got three, count it or not, 3 World Championships that will be going on. The first one will kick off on Tuesday because NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series from the Magic Mile of New Hampshire Motor Speedway will be the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series, the 10th round, as everyone looks to try and get in the race for the chase. Not only that, but on Saturday, we are going to have ourselves the Blancpain GT Series that is going to be so crucial to watch with the 6 hours of Spa. And while I did lie, it was only 2 World Championships, but to make it up, although we're not broadcasting it, the 24 hours of Spa-Francorchamps will be so crucial for everyone to join and for everyone to go and get into. But from myself, hashtag Do You Mind Jake Sparey, from Mr. Cameron Walsh and Mr. Paul Smith, it's a job to catch up Job, and nobody really seems to have the tools. The freighter's close, but can anyone overdo it? Well, it's going to be a double header to make sure that it happens indeed. Good night.